Hello and welcome to our first podcast here. In episode one, Michelle Bowman from Microsoft. Michelle, we've got a bit of a history over the past couple of years. We got to know each other, and especially in the boardroom space, but most of the time online. So, welcome
Yeah.
to the show, Michelle.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's good to see you, buddy. It's been a minute. We run into each other at large conferences these days. We're so far apart in the world. But I'm really appreciative of all the work that you've been doing for Microsoft and for Teams Rooms, and I'm excited to be here today.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, you've transitioned through the years. I've transitioned through the years, so that creates an interesting environment where we've both grown together, and where boardrooms have grown to and AI has grown to, I think is the more important topic here, because I think right now we've seen a global crisis called COVID, and all of a sudden we've got a global crisis called fuel. All of a sudden,
Right.
so it makes it interesting into where the world's going to go to, where AI is going to go to. So I think just
Yeah.
give us a bit of update where you are, Michelle, in this whole transition, your whole environment, and where do you fit into the Microsoft ecosystem today?
Yeah. So I lead the what we call the AI powered workplace program, which is a program within Microsoft where we try or where we work with Microsoft partners, and we try and help end customers to get the most out of their offices and meeting spaces. And we do that through a program. So my focus is a lot on meetings. I have a love-hate relationship with them. I think we have too many. I think they're all too long, and I think there are too many people in the meeting room often. But seeing how technology can help in these environments and how we can really bridge the gap between people and technology is stuff that excites me and keeps me going. We sit in the Teams product group, so we get to see a lot of the exciting stuff that's about to be released over the next months or years. So it's a very interesting space to be in.
So find him on LinkedIn, find that future stuff. I don't think it's that easy,
Yeah.
but so
It's
so I mean,
especially now, it's like a weird time. A Build is coming up, Microsoft Build, which is a large Microsoft conference in a couple of months. So you kind of see what the announcements are going to be. So I'm in this twilight zone where I'm trying to figure out what did we release and what haven't we released yet, and what can we talk about and what can't we talk about, or maybe talk about a little today. But I'm in that weird twilight zone.
I won't mention a brand, but I actually just met with somebody new you guys are onboarding, so it's quite interesting. But I won't mention anything. It's just quite interesting because they've taken the world with their camera technology by storm. The quality they bring out is phenomenal, but I've seen some interesting AI gestures for personal space, educational space, and I was having a chat with them about healthcare. But that's interesting. But I guess let's start off the central point where people know us from, and I mean, just to get to know a bit about you, what would you say personally for you over the past 10 years has been the biggest upgrade in the boardroom space?
For me, for me, it's not about like one feature. It's not. I'm sure we'll talk about a lot about AI today as well. For me, it's about the removal of friction. Like you see a lot of meeting rooms and boardrooms that maybe have no cameras, maybe just have one of those speaker pucks or some of those old phones in there, but not even video. And I think that has changed a whole lot. And there's not a lot of hey, can you hear me? Can you see my screen? Someone please dial into the bridge and hit your 8-digit password to dial into the meeting room. Today, with intelligent meeting rooms, the meeting just simply starts, right? So people walk in, join instantly. Remote participants feel like they're part of the meeting, and even though there is this return to office thing happening in the world, we still see that a lot of meetings are hybrid. So the biggest upgrade isn't the technology itself. It's really the shift from, I would almost call it connecting devices, like which cable do I plug into which port, shifting into connecting people. And I think that's the stuff that I'm most excited about.
I still see somewhat the boardroom sitting sometimes in a facility space more than in a strategic space. And I mean, what would your opinion be? Is it more infrastructure today, or is it more a collaboration layer?
That's a great point. I think many organizations still see meeting rooms and boardrooms as just real estate, right? And they are in some way, but more than anything, they're like collaborational infrastructure almost. Right, so I like what you I like it's becoming more and more like they're becoming a strategic, a decision-making layer, right? How do we turn ideas into commitments, and how do we turn those commitments into projects, and then projects into revenue? And so I think you're spot on. I think it's more about collaboration than it is about the infrastructure itself or the real estate.
Okay. And in regards to, Copilot, you were mentioning it, you know, has it become a daunting feature for most people out there to say, "Oh, not something else to learn," or how should executives more embrace it in meetings? Because what is the competitiveness it brings into your business if you use Copilot correctly in your boardroom versus it just being an AI and AI by some people just being shot down completely today. Where do Copilot fit in then today to that
So I
environment?
think first of all, I empathize with those that are saying, "Oh, it's another thing I need to learn," and it all moves so fast, right? I mean, something that's new today might be old in 3 weeks because these models continue to improve, and the stuff that we put into Copilot, we just announced Copilot Cowork, which is basically your Copilot now turning into a doer instead of just a listener and someone that gives you advice. It actually does the thing for you. So a thing that I like to do is every Friday I work with Copilot Cowork to figure out my agenda for next week because I'm always double booked and it's a little bit crazy in there. And it makes suggestions. And then whenever I'm like, oh, I agree with that one, change that one, and don't do that one because that's just a bad idea. I hit go and it goes off and it starts doing the work for us, right? So there's a lot to win there. I think one of the challenges that many executives still have is they're drowning in meetings and engagements. And so we need to think about how does Copilot really change participation rate? And I think it fundamentally changes the role of a leader in the meeting. So instead of having to take notes and track actions or remember who said what on the meeting, rooms can help with that as well by doing voice recognition or face recognition. The summarization afterwards, leaders can now really focus on. I would almost say, I don't like the word, but it's almost like judgment, right? Summarizing everything that has been discussed, identify unresolved questions, capturing action items, maybe even highlighting like areas of disagreement and stuff that we need to fix. And that is just step one, because the next step is we talk a lot about the concept of frontier firm, which is a company where both people and AI work very closely together. And we see this happening in three phases. Step one is the stuff that I just described, where you have an AI assistant, in this case, M365 Copilot, that helps you to do the job. That'll turn into an AI teammate that is actually there with you. And I think facilitator, which is one of the agents that we have, is one of those examples where the facilitator starts writing notes, keeps you honest on the agenda, will becoming more and more proactive and doing some stuff for you as well. But these agents are turning into AI teammates. The next step, Benjamin, is they'll turn into operators, right? So they'll start doing the work for you. And that's something that we're actually doing as a team. We are on our team, and you know our team, we don't have a very large team, but we do have 4 or 5 agents that already work for us. It's almost like they're on the org chart, right? And I think that is going to help, especially these leaders, but really, honestly, everyone across the board is going to help them to do work that they actually excel in, and all the stuff that they can automate can be handled by these agents.
So I think Deepak, you joining in here in a conversation on the other side. But Deepak, welcome from HP Poly. Um, I actually know we're also supposed to have a session today, linking into the session. So, but it's fine. You've joined now, so we'll make you part of the first episode
That's
here.
fantastic.
Uh,
Thanks so much, Ben. How are you doing, Michelle?
Good to see you, Deepak.
Yeah, likewise. I wasn't
so Deep,
sure. I mean, yeah, go for it, Ben.
no, that's fine. Deep. So, I mean, what we just basically covered is the AI into a boardroom, and where do you see the benefits there, basically, from your guys' side into the boardroom, knowing, hey, there's a bit of, as I mentioned earlier, a COVID crisis that we lived through, learning from working from home. Now we're living through a fuel crisis. staff is concerned. Shucks, but can I get to the office every day? A lot of people in South Africa has returned to the office. How do you guys from a HP Poly side say, okay, there's AI, we've got headsets, we've got webcams, we've got boardroom tools. Doesn't matter where you are, we can kind of connect people together.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. So I think it's a loaded question, but I think since we've got Michelle and the big guns on the call, the thing is, we've evolved. I think 5 years ago, you know, we were kind of scrambling in the pandemic, just trying to get some sort of device, and assuming it was kind of best effort in terms of that type of device. Fast forward 2026, with the might and the breadth of portfolio that we have from HP, hybrid work isn't just something that we actively preach. I mean, we kind of live it. We're doing it every single day with the variety of devices that you have out there today. It's hybrid has become the norm. We've accepted it. We've embraced it. It's genuinely how we work. It was a bit far-fetched, a couple of years ago, but in terms of how AI has also accelerated the adoption, I think with the likes of uh, live captions, translations, uh, note taking, all of those additional features have also accelerated the user experience, but also given users a lot more one time and also boosting productivity. Because now you get a whole lot of rich media out your meeting. It's consolidated, it's scripted, there's action points. Uh, Often enough, if I'm unable to attend a meeting, I can quickly review the transcript or I can review the recording, which just brings me up to speed, you know, quickly. If there were specific call outs for my action, I can immediately see, if there's anything that's worth me following up on, and, just reaching out to the customer and providing that follow up.
Just to add to that, I think what a lot of companies still struggle to understand is they don't lose employees because of location, right? So it's not about work from home or work in the office. They lose employees because of autonomy. Hybrid work is not it's not a policy issue. It's a trust and experience issue, right? The real cost of losing an employee it's not in recruitment or having to find someone new. It's about just losing that, what is it, institutional knowledge, right? Everything that you capture, it's about broken team continuity. It's about delayed project. It's about customer momentum just slowing down. It's about leadership, spending time to build trust. I think where organizations that aren't focusing on location, where they're winning today, it's like they're redesigning an experience where employees can contribute effectively, whether they're remote or in the room. And I think the equipment that both HP Poly sells and the software that we deliver on top of it is really helping with that. And you'll see a lot of stuff coming to things like the facilitator agent over the next couple of months that are going to help you even more. But essentially, what you're doing when you have a Teams Rooms device is you giving the office or the meeting room eyes, ears, and a brain, right? And this is really going to help to elevate that experience of employees, whether they are in the office or they're not. And so I think companies need to rethink, like, what is this thing about location and employees, and how do we make sure we get the most out of them? Again, it's not about the location. It's about trust and the experience that you can give. Because I'll be honest, if everyone's always in the office and I'm dialing in and they don't have the right equipment in the room and I feel disconnected, I'll start feeling disconnected from work as well, right? So if you facilitate
Absolutely.
hybrid, then make sure you have the right equipment in place as well that actually lives up to the promise of what almost the expectation of what users have is, which is feeling connected to what's happening in a location that they're not in.
I think you've touched on something important. It's like employees will do it my way, or you're replaceable. I think that concept is changing slowly, and maybe too slow, because what is the actual cost of replacing an employee? Right? It comes down
Mhm.
to, I have to retrain, I have to make you part of the project, I have to reintroduce you. I lose momentum because the team don't know you. And I'm just going to look at your background there. If I take the transition from Lewis Hamilton to Ferrari, it took a year for him to become competitive. It's not because he's a bad driver. It's not because Ferrari is a bad car. Some people just quickly jump in. Some people take time to adopt. You can take it to a football team. These people have good teams to make sure they incorporate you part of the team. Companies out there don't necessarily have teams to make sure you incorporate. They go like, Oh, you qualified, you've gone through a HR process, I've made sure you know everything. Cool, you're onboarded. Oh, shucks. If you use, and I'm just gonna use example, if you use SAP, there's different ways to use SAP, and how you used to use SAP and how we want you to use SAP could be two different ways, and just where and how you save documents. But you lose momentum, you lose trust in the team, you cause friction. And what is that actual cost then versus saying, hey, I have not done a work from home policy because I don't trust my employees. How can I then use Copilot and Microsoft to help me build this policy, to help me bring together all the data I have in my head to kind of structure it? Where do you then start using that AI to help you structure what you have as an executive or a business owner or a manager of of a large team or a region, bring that all together to help you motivate it correctly?
Yeah, so I fully agree, and just to stick with that F1 piece, like that I read yesterday that GP is leaving Red Bull for McLaren, and GP has been that's the guy you hear on the radio when Max is cussing at him. Right, but GP leaving, it's not GP can be replaced, right? What you can't replace is GP's knowledge. So if you start losing employees, let's bring it back to the business world. If you start losing employees, yes, you can always find someone new, but you'll lose that IP. You'll lose that, and that is so the knowledge that GP or Lewis or whoever brings to a Formula One team. That's the part that is the most valuable part in the organization. Okay, we can all three of us can be replaced in the company that we work for, right? But the knowledge that we take with us is actually the painful part. So we need to make sure that people can perform in a way that works best for them, where they feel most comfortable, all while delivering on companies' expectations.
Deeps, what does that healthy work-life balance look like when have to look at equipment to procure, right? Because if you're going to go for something that's just budget focused, which, I mean, I'm not just talking even from another brand, but even in your own portfolio, from a budget to a high executive one, how do you profile correctly all of these things so that you don't make sure you cut down on somebody that's on the phone and a call center the whole time remotely, causing a work-life frustration because they can't get to their targets or something, versus how do you protect that with equipment versus software versus employee culture and training?
Look, I think again we've seen the shift. So, with regards to life cycle of product, a lot of we've got a lot of options today, and also we've kind of so as an HP point, we've basically got a persona based matrix, which usually helps customers identify with the plethora of options out there today. We use it as a guideline, to say, let's understand what type of users you have within your organization. I mean, those would be regular office-based users, they might be executive users, or those might be sales reps on the road. And these are also ensuring that let's enable the right people, number one, with the right type of devices, you know, but also giving them the autonomy to be able to deliver, not just necessarily having the right tools, but being able to literally join a call from wherever you might be. For example, if you might have a logistical kind of user, that environment is fairly unique in the sense of warehousing, logistical, I mean, particular solutions for very specific environments, you know, and then also then adding on to the life cycle of the product. So it's, yes, fantastic. If you're leading with HP, we will ensure that we'll embed the entire life cycle of the product for you. So, for the next 5 to 7 years, you're making a sound investment in terms of the solution that you have. And we can guarantee that, working along our partners like Microsoft, to ensure that they've got that longevity in terms of support, but also not just kind of just shoehorning a kind of solution, but giving the customer the ultimate peace of mind that he's making a sound investment.
I think especially now, right, in this world of where things move so fast, when you're making a decision on what equipment to choose, like let's stick with the boardroom or any meeting room, you making a decision for the next 6 to 7 years. Right. So you got to think about how do I not just get the right equipment, how do I future proof my rooms? Because something is going to pop around the corner in a couple of months, and you want to make sure that you can have that technology in your meeting room as well instead of having to go through another refresh. That's why, Ben, you know how passionate I am about BYOD, right? And how BYOD is not the solution. When you go BYOD, you might choose for like lower price or whatever, even though the price of like deployment is often the highest cost, and that cost has come down with 70% because many of the devices you can now deploy in like 15 minutes. But it's when you go the BYOD route, you basically say no to everything AI in the meeting room because you cannot do all this cool AI stuff. And I think you spoke about work-life balance. Technology shouldn't just make work faster. It should almost make work like finite. Like it needs to end somewhere during the day. And the faster we can get maybe one step back even further, like what's a meeting? Right? A meeting is a lot of people just use it to inform each other. That's a waste of time. Right. So because we can always inform and hopefully in Teams, or maybe it's still an email or it's something else. But meetings should be designed to just make decisions. And the faster you can get to the decision, the faster the work ends. So if you can have a solution, so if you can have the equipment around you, and that's both hardware, software, services, platform, whatever, that helps you get to the solution, the decision faster, and make sure that the decisions are made earlier. I think that's more important than fast. But decisions are made earlier. That's when work can also stop earlier, and it can also take away some of the stuff that you're just not as good at or very time consuming. My manager asked me to write up business reviews, and I know that I'm a horrible writer, right? So I have 3 agents that all work together to write an MBR for me, and every month, a couple of days before I have to hand in my MBR, I get the MBR from my agents. I look at it, I change 1 or 2 things, and within 15 minutes, I'm done, right? And then work ends. So I think again, it's not about it's how can you ensure that the equipment and the technology help you to make decisions being made earlier. And I think the technology should always help you to do that, and not the other way around. I think, and that sounds bad for a guy that makes money off of how many active devices there are in the world, but I think the hardware devices and the license are just collateral. It's all about the experience, and I think that's something that people need to get in mind when they make these investments. Like, hey, what is going to help us to just get work done?
I want to touch on something and then I'll go back to what you said. But the cost versus the cost is kind of, I think, a key topic to discuss, because the cost of you not having a proper boardroom, in the sense that your battery dies, somebody needs to share content, somebody else. Now you're running on a BYOD device. What is the actual cost to every meeting you're losing with 2, 3, 5, 10 people in a boardroom or in a call, and you're starting 10, 15 minutes late? That causes a frustrating part at the back end, because now I can't get my work done quick enough because this meeting has delayed me. That causes other frustrations. Or sensitive data being shared because you've opened up your screen, everybody shares a screen, or you forgot to press screen share, and all of those minutes ticking by with everybody in the boardroom causes frustration. It causes sometimes jokes. If you have a bad work culture, it doesn't create a better environment. And it doesn't really build your company. But what you did say builds your company is AI. Now, I hear a lot of people here in South Africa saying, oh, AI is going to take jobs. But you've just explained your life becoming more productive, you're getting more done. And that is actually the ultimate thing. Now your IT guy goes to the boardroom because somebody couldn't share something on HDMI, and it's actually USB-C now, and got all of that tech that you have to try and balance. Instead of saying, hey, how can I make my employees more productive, get more work done ultimately? Because all I'm going to do is I'm going to call a meeting, and we're going to have wasted every day 15 minutes for a late meeting started. Instead of saying, hey, I've got AI here to help me be more productive. I'm going to help my employees be more productive. How do you how do you change that mindset for people saying, oh, AI is going to replace jobs, to, hey, if I embrace learning AI for my own role, whether I'm a receptionist, a logistics person, a manager, executive, a call center agent, why should I rather focus on learning how AI can help me do those mundane tasks instead of me going through my calendar looking, hey, how many meetings have I had? Who have I met with? What was discussed in that? Because that's ultimately what you're saying you use AI for a lot. But how do you get that mindset change to most people to embrace it instead of resisting it?
Let me start by saying AI will replace jobs, right? So that is definitely going to happen. But at the same time, if you just look at history, we'll always have new jobs. And I think how our jobs will change is we'll become, we like to call it agent bosses, right? So we'll be the agent will be doing a lot of the work for us, and we're checking if the agents are doing the work in the right way, yes or no. It's like our engineers, the AI is writing a lot of the code. Still, the engineers look at the code and review it and work with it, and then retrain the whoever whatever AI you're using, and then we're gonna refine it, right? So I think jobs are definitely gonna go away, and at the same time, I think we'll have new jobs that'll arise as well. You spoke about, and then I'll ask you a question. You spoke about the scenario how IT now has to go to a room. What if you I keep thinking about this. So in some of our senior leadership in Microsoft, they have a person that before they go into a meeting room, that person goes in first and then checks to see if one, the tech is working, but then two, if the chairs are set correctly, if there's no chair in front of the camera, if there's no cups on the table, maybe someone spilled coffee or maybe someone has some food there. What if we could give every room in the world one of those people, right? In the form of AI. I think that would be so cool. And then to answer your question, I think people just we need to show value, right? And we show value by just really showing it to them and not just talking about it. Like, hey, let me bring you into the scenario and then show it to you and how it works. And that's when things really starting to click. It's almost the same as with Teams rooms. Like you can say how great it is to have one touch join, but the moment an end user comes into a room and instead of having to fight over who shares their laptop or who plugs in the HDMI cable, someone just pushes one button. And the moment they see it and push that one button is when they're sold, right? So I think you got to show them the experience. We need to stop talking about, oh, this camera has this field of view and it has this many cameras and this many speakers and this is the resolution, and no one cares but us, right? The end user just wants the good experience. And I think to increase like an AI mindset is to just show it. When I show an app that I built, and maybe the agent that does my business reviews, right? Or the agent that handles all of our travel and expenses, or the agent that handles all of our marketing investments, or the agent that collects all the insights. When you show it and you show how they collaborate together, that's when people have this light bulb moment. Like, wait a minute, this is not some funky scenario that I see on YouTube of people getting excited about this new piece of AI. No, this is actually how it benefits my day-to-day life. And that's when they'll flip the switch and start using it more, I think.
So, talking about these boardroom moments, what is the funniest moment that you guys have ever seen in a boardroom happening? The one that you just can't forget?
Deepak, you go first.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. This is going to be a bit of a throwback, but I think it's quite instilled within me. So if historically, um, when we were still dialing IP addresses or long sub-URIs to actually join into a call, you had a remote control and you had to now physically type in 192.168.1.xyz, and you didn't have a touch panel at the time, and you had everything being driven from a remote control, and God forbid, if there was one mistype, you had to delete all of that and then, input the DTMF codes again for you to join the call. And, sheesh, I was the guy on standby, always connecting the call for, my big bosses at the time. And I would stand there like, a deer in the headlights, just making sure I don't have any mistypes. So, that was my kind of moment, the standby guy to join the call.
Wow, that is a throwback. I was visiting a customer the other day, and they told me that they had this big board meeting, international board meeting, and they had a cool Microsoft signature room set up with a half moon shaped table. It looked all fancy. But then there were a bunch of wires also coming out the table. And so they go into this international board meeting, and one of the execs has an iPad, his personal iPad, but the battery was almost dead. So he sees a USB-C cable on the table, and he grabs it. And then while I think he had some kind of game still on his iPad, so while he plugs in, and again, high international board, plugs in his iPad, thinking he was gonna charge, he actually started sharing his Flappy Bird experience with that group. I think stuff like that is always fun.
I think if you're creative, you've got to like, guys, can we stop playing games now? We need to get serious
Yeah,
about
exactly.
business.
Yeah.
You know, turn it into a more serious moment. I remember I walked into a boardroom and it was like a very simple thing. And this is where I actually started liking Microsoft Teams. I think I was one of the very first people to adopt it. I had no choice as to where I was. Deepak, if you remember how hard I was pushing Microsoft Teams at the beginning, struggling with SIP, but trying to just get both screens on. You know, you've got a remote and it didn't just automatically switch on the screens. Today, the PCs do that for you. Back then, it's like one was on, one was off. Oh, man. Stand there trying to hold your hand, like trying to switch one on and off.
Focusing the IR to monitor 1. As soon as you switch off monitor 1, monitor 2 goes off.
Exactly. So,
Those were the
just a
days.
bit back at it. I mean, we've covered a lot of things, and I think one of the things that's important, what's needed from people to be successful in meetings, is you need to have an agenda for a meeting. I still get so many meetings where there's no agenda. And it's like, okay, so we're not going to track an outcome. I can have AI, right, to try and do anything. But there's so many meetings where you go back and you discuss the same thing 4 times because there was there was a resolution, but nobody did the job because nobody remember who was supposed to do the job. And we're going to ask it again. So I think the first part is, you have to have an agenda because then you can have an outcome. And how does Microsoft turn those more meetings into better meetings? Because it's fine saying, as for executive, hey, yes, you've got a lot of meetings, but are they better meetings or is it just meetings because some things were not actioned? And how does Microsoft help you overcome that piece? And what do you need to do to make sure you can track it correctly?
Yeah, so I'll tell you the Microsoft piece, and then I'll tell you how we do it because some of it has to do with culture, I think. So you, meetings almost need to be like a structured decision workflow, right? So Teams as a platform, it provides the shared workspace, the room experience, the collaborational fabric. And then Copilot adds the summarization and the capturing and the unresolved questions, and then maybe even recommendations on what to do next. So instead of meeting being events, which is what a lot of companies do, they become steps in an outcome-driven process. So how we like to do that as a team, and Ben, you know this because you and I are on a meeting every now and then. Meetings with me are always 20 to 25 minutes. And even when I do my weekly meeting with the team, it's always 20, 25 minutes where we try and use our meeting to actually get questions answered, right? So it's all about decision making. Right after this, I'm on a meeting with my team. We're putting together a European tour. So we're going to London, Copenhagen, Paris, and Amsterdam for an AI Power Workplace tour. Excuse me. And we're not using that meeting to inform each other on how many registration each session has or to inform each other about how whatever goes. No, we use that meeting to make decisions. So we've already done the pre-read stuff. Everyone comes to the meeting prepared. Now we use those 20 minutes to make a couple of decisions that we have to make. And then afterwards, again, using the power of AI and stuff that Facilitator and Copilot helps us with, we actually start doing the work so that when we go to the next session, we already briefed everyone on the work that we did based on the outcomes from this week. And then we can go through a fresh cycle. And sometimes we might even say, hey, let's not have the meeting because there are no decisions to be made. We just need to continue to do the work. And so at one, it's using the platform to make these things easier, but then also embedding your culture. Like, hey, we're not gonna do 75-minute meetings with 25 people because 90% of the people will be just scrolling their LinkedIn profiles, and maybe two people will be speaking. Also, if you add more than 7 people, with every person you add, the effectiveness of the meeting declines by 10%. There's some research there. And also, the more time you give something, the longer it will take. So if you force 20 minutes, it'll most likely end in 20 minutes. If you force 75, it'll take 75 minutes, right? So I think one is the technology, two is the culture, and then blending those together.
Deeps, how do you blend the culture together with the hardware, together with building trust with remote and in-person meetings? Because ultimately, the meeting location has become a home, has become a car, become airport, a
Mhm.
boardroom. How do you bring that collaboration together with building a culture and a trust together with all of that?
Look, so I think it's important for number one, uh, people to embrace the technology. You still have people that are still, I want to say, shy or scared to actually not easy to walk into a boardroom and just, I mean, one touch dial is fantastic. We know that. We walk into a meeting room, we know exactly what it does. But for somebody that's possibly not as tech savvy as we are, still has is reluctant. Often enough I get called into the room and it's, guys, that's here's a quick 101. How do you guys, like, it's informal, and because we do it so frequently, it's just, guys, if you have a meeting, oh, I don't expect you to go on a full-on training session, but ad hoc, impromptu, kind of just, providing that guidance. It also builds a rapport with my colleagues internally, because often enough, it's like, I'm not your meeting joiner guy. I'm just helping out, you know. But also, it just helps, me collaborate, number one, with my colleagues internally. It starts to build that culture, because it would have been, for example, a colleague I never interacted with previously. But now it's giving me the ability to say, well, Deepak's a cool guy. If I get lost, I'll just, he's not my tech support guy, but, he can help out where necessary. So it also helps in that kind of culture. I find personally uh, that's what's been working from a local HP point of view. Uh, a lot of the colleagues, just sometimes have become actually a lot more comfortable using the technology now, whereas previously they would just be locked down to their desks with their headsets. And I'm like, guys, here's the boardroom. Have a one-on-one session. Here's the demo room. Just get them exposed to it in a little bit easier way, and I find that helps.
And I think if you add the whole AI element into that, what you sometimes hear, I had one yesterday that said, I don't want AI to listen to my meetings. Right? And I don't want things to be recorded because I'm just afraid it's more surveillance than everything else. Right? So trust in that regard doesn't come from monitoring, it comes from transparency. Right? And I think platforms like Teams and Copilot, they don't evaluate people. They just support the work. So I think that's very important to understand. And for people to understand it, everyone sees the same information. The accountability becomes mutual, not what is it, managerial. And that kind of reframes technology as well. Just be open about what you are and aren't doing in a meeting, and then maybe explain a little bit about what happens in the back end. Like we've had customers that say, "Hey, we don't want to do voice recognition because we're concerned with biometrics being stored in a tenant, and we don't want that." Well, actually, we don't store biometrics. We use a voice sample and then we create a signature these days, which is a hash, which is non-reversible. And so it's just a hash. It's not related to you as an individual. And then people are like, oh, wait a minute. Never thought about it that way. So you're just doing this to make sure that we can have more effective meetings? Yes. Okay, cool. Then it's fine. Right. So again, I think it's really much about transparency and explaining and then people will gain more trust.
I think just to on one of the last topics to dive into, you're talking about the Copilot, but maybe just explain to people also, for those that might not know, how Copilot actually works, in the sense that it's not an open platform that all your data gets shared to. You kind of, it's self-learning also inside your organization, and anything you kind of input stays your organization's data, be that voice, be that data you put in for it to analyze, be that emails for it to analyze. It kind of stays partially your data because that data doesn't leave your tenant, correct in saying that?
Yes, correct. So what I think, and that's a great point, by the way. We didn't talk about that too much today. What we're seeing is that a lot of companies are still using consumer AI. Now that is tricky because that means that you're basically making your hold on, give me a second. You're basically making your IP part of the public domain because a lot of these services are very open and they say, hey, when you use our model, we're going to use your stuff to train it and make it better. Also, with some of these paid offers, I see a bunch of bots coming into our community calls every time where someone found some free trial of a bot that takes meeting notes. And if you go and check where they store their data, it's maybe in some random data center somewhere in the US. And even on the paid plan, they say, hey, we're going to train the model with your data, even on the paid plan. Right. So you want to stay away from that and go with a commercial plan where your data is not being used to make the large language model better. And that's where, and so that's number one. And then two is sometimes people are on that paid plan and they use things that they call connectors. Right. So you can connect it to your Outlook or you can connect it to your Gmail or connect it to your, whatever you're using. These connectors only do that one-to-one connection, but that's not really how work works. Right? Work is continuous. It flows between people and information and files. And so you need something that's fully integrated. And that's what M365 Copilot, it fully understands how you work. We call it work IQ, fully understands how you work. And it also respects all the policies and data governance that's set up in your organization. So I used to work for a company, I won't mention the name, but we had our people review and my manager accidentally opened it. So she shared her display and she accidentally had a Excel spreadsheet open with all of the salaries of all of the people, ranked from highest to lowest. First two things I noticed was I'm too low on the list. And then two, I was able to see the file name because within 5 seconds, she figured out that she was sharing something that she couldn't be sharing. So she closed the file. But I remember the file name and I went onto the SharePoint and searched for that file and found it. So I could take my time to figure out, hey, where should I be placed on this list and use it for my next promo negotiation. So hopefully that doesn't happen in companies today, and they've set up a structure where I would never even have access to those kind of files. And now Copilot will respect that, right? So Copilot will say, oh, you might want to have access to that file, or you want me to grab some information from that file, but I don't have access to it. And so I cannot give you anything. So also in terms of data governance, it's going to help you. So one is get away from these commercial tools. I'm sorry, these personal tools. Two, it's integrated with your work IQ. And then three, it respects the data governance.
So, last question to your side, Deepak. I mean, with work from home culture, it brings other benefits like eco-friendliness because you're using less fuel. But looking at selecting a brand as well, there is a lot of things to take in consideration there as well, from a recycling and an eco-friendliness. And what is that that you would say people need to take in consideration on top of everything they do of quality, brand sustainability? What do what's your guys' advice for people out there selecting a brand, taking an eco-friendly approach into everything?
Look, I think I'll start with the consumer side. So, like you have the consumer-based software elements, we find, in a lot of on the technology side, a lot of consumer type of devices are also being utilized for meetings, and sometimes these may work, they work well, but when it comes to, purpose-built devices for specific use cases, this is when we're able to articulate very clearly what's the benefits of using an HP Poly headset or a Teams room, with the G9 Plus associated to it. What is the benefits? Is this a regular PC that I can just, buy off the shelf and image with Teams? No, Mr. Customer. These are the benefits, so we can drill down into a lot more specific details and, provide a proper uh, guideline in the sense of saying it's not just a regular type of device. It's purpose built for this specific use case, and this is what it's intended for. Because we've seen in the field, a lot of mixed type of technology solutions being incorporated in different kind of ways. But also maybe to come back to your initial question was like from a sustainability standpoint, you know, the devices, how are they manufactured? Where are they manufactured? What is the materials that's being utilized on these devices? We've seen a lot of these, I mean, over the years, we've obviously evolved and recyclable materials, in the sense of uh, the chassis of our all-in-one video bars. These are made from 100% post-consumer recyclable plastic, which typically are found off the sea coasts of around the world. So I mean, reusing all of those kind of materials, even the packaging themselves, you know, moving away from a lot of plastic-based packaging with more, you know, paper-based devices which are biodegradable, is also which talks to the greater sustainability message that we uh, obviously embarking on, which we, you know, intend to spread out through the entire portfolio.
And Michelle, to you, last question there. We were talking about these documents, and it's something I want to dive into the future with you. But these documents by accident being shared, what's the number one tip you would give to people saying, hey, improve your security like this? Because security, AI, and eco-friendliness is kind of the three main themes I'm hearing this year. But, what would be your number one tip to make sure people stay secure out there with AI, with boardrooms and everything in use that we're talking about today?
I think so. Start with one, enable M365 Copilot Chat, which is part of your subscription in most cases. That means your users no longer have to use consumer AI to do all this cool AI stuff. So you can get going. And then two is work with a partner like yourself to figure out how to set up and analyze your current data governance. Right, start there, and then only then start deploying Copilot and do it in small projects. Right, so find a team or a group. Like we started with customer service in Microsoft, and then we went to sales, and then we rolled it out to the rest. Like start in a group where it can make a lot of impact, and then work through scenarios. And only after that, never do a big bang. Just do it phased. But again, start enabling M365 Copilot Chat, part of your license in most cases. While you're doing that, take a look at your data governance. If you have data specialists in-house, great. If not, work with a great partner like yourself, and then start doing the rollout.
Well, there we go. So I think a lot of things were said today. So if you've been watching this, whatever platform it is you've been watching it on, leave some comments for us. Let us know what those questions are, so we also learn what you guys are requiring, where you guys are struggling, and let us know how we can assist you going forward with these type of podcasts, or if you want to have a one-on-one conversation, reach out to us. All three of us are on LinkedIn available, and we do try and make ourselves available because all three of us do love tech, do love supporting people. So might get some free tips even from all of that. But thank you for watching, Deeps. Thank you for joining. Michelle, thank you very much for your time, and we'll be in touch very soon.
Thanks, Ben.
Cool. Cheers, guys.